The October 25th, 2016 meeting of the Methacton School District Board of School Directors is now called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, flag's over here. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job. All right.
Hello, my name is Paige Berkowski, and I'm so happy to represent Worcester Elementary School. There are so many things here that I love. Here are some of my favorites. I love how every morning Mr. Sorgini waits outside and greets everyone in the morning, and how he goes on the loudspeakers and says good morning to everyone. I also love how he goes into everyone's classroom and sees what kind of work we're doing. I also love how we get together at assemblies and Mrs. Broadhead talks about the school rules we have. I also love how we do fun activities like bingo, ice cream social, and the Kinder First Grade Mixer. I love Worcester, but if I mentioned them, all of my favorites, we'd be here all night. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed some of my reasons why I love Worcester.
Good job. I have to sign these official documents. Okay, so these certificates make you official junior school board director members. Are you ready to take on all the responsibilities and duties of these positions? Are you sure? Okay, congratulations. There you go.
Great job. Great job. You did awesome. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Go, Joe.
All right, that's always the fun part of the meeting, the highlight. Now let's go on to the regular agenda. Just to notify the public, is hereby advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purposes of rebroadcasting. In terms of executive sessions, there was an executive session of the Finance Committee held on October 12th in the Farina Center for the purpose of discussing the appointment of the Director of Business Services. That's a very exciting one. There was an executive session of the board held following the work session on October 18th for the purposes of discussing the appointment of the Director of Business Services. And there was an executive session of the board held on October 24th in the Farina Center for purposes of contract negotiation, discussions regarding the Methacton Education Association, and the Teamsters contracts. In terms of attendance, everybody is here except Mr. Roth, who's under the weather, and we hope he feels better soon. In terms of recognition of guests and scheduled speakers, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you, Mr. President. This evening, as we've been doing now for several months, is starting to bring the home and school associations forward to present the work and support that they lend our teachers, our students, and our community in the respective schools. So this evening, it gives me pleasure to introduce members of the Worcester Home and School Association who have a presentation that they'd like to share with us. So I'd like, if at all possible, the board would take their seats in the front row, and we'll begin the presentation. Thank you.
Nobody's here. Amy's presenting. Do you need any slides or I'll just hit it then. Yeah. Oh, let's ask Angela. Yep. Good. So easy. Okay.
Everyone, please focus.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Smith, and I am the Vice President at Worcester's Home and School Association. And here also this evening is Jennifer Cancro. She is the President. And we are here to talk a little bit about what we do for Worcester and how we engage, become the bridge between the homes and the school. So here we go. Worcester's Home and School Association is grateful to coordinate and participate in educational and social programs accentuating the excellent education of our faculty and what they give our students. Like all Methacton home and school departments networked under the Coordinating Council, Worcester provides volunteers not only during school hours, but also for social events and additional school-themed activities. Here you can see on the slide, we have a little blurb about Ag Lab. Home and School funds a mobile laboratory on a yearly basis so that Worcester students can experience a hands-on agricultural science lesson. This program enables the community to remember its farming history and also to encourage the students to learn how to be self-sustaining. In keeping with the strong interest in earth and life sciences, Home and School also contributes to Mrs. Wendy Keller's Environmental Club when called upon. Mrs. Deborah Cherry, Worcester's librarian, has undergone professional training to promote and encourage student interest in STEAM-focused initiatives. Through a partnership with Home and School, the Maker Mondays program is available weekly to students in grades 1 through 4. Students have the opportunity to try planned challenges in a structured yet exploratory atmosphere. The goal is to create an early interest in STEAM careers through a hands-on experimental environment. Gotcha. There is something appealing to each student at every Maker Monday session. This program is a lesson in ingenuity, creativity, problem-solving, critical thinking, and imagination, all things that are required not only for academic excellence, but also for a lifetime of success. Examples of some of the challenges we provide during this Maker Monday period are programming robotics, writing and filming skits using iPads, designing structures with a myriad of materials like Legos, K'NEX, straws, and cardboard, creating storylines based on children's literature in a collaborative setting, textile crafting, circuitry, and testing hypotheses. Just this past Monday, yesterday, I was in for the Maker Monday session, and we were trying to construct goalposts, football goalposts, without them falling down with just a limited amount of materials. Even the first grade were coming up with so many different ideas. They weren't successful, but you could see they were excited to try, and they were very engaged in what they were doing. And finally, they ended up coming up with a wider base and a stronger structure. But just to see the whole thought process and how engaged they were and how motivated they were, it was really amazing. The Home and School Maker Monday Committee researches ideas, plans multiple activity stations, and supervises the student participants. Home and School is glad to aid in bringing Mrs. Cherry's vision to Worcester, and we hope to help it grow over time. The Maker Mondays are kicked off each year with the Cardboard Challenge. Last year, families created displays for the Worcester Zoo. This year, Worcester's float in the Methacton Homecoming Parade was comprised of representations as to why Worcester is pawsome. And that's a little blurb there. You can see at the bottom there I have the Cardboard Challenge website listed. That this whole program began because a little boy was at his father's shop every day, and he was taking the boxes from the shipping and trying to make an arcade, and he inspired a filmmaker, and it turned into this global movement to talk about ingenuity and engineering and STEAM, and it all came from just this little boy's imagination. It's really an amazing sight. So here are some examples of creations. This was from the zoo. Go ahead, Jen. That was from the zoo too, and this was our float in the parade this year. You can see the wolf and some different things there. Each year, Worcester Home and School plans, publicizes, and staffs many family events, such as an ice cream social, a kindergarten first grade mixer, a movie night, mother-son event, father-daughter dance, fourth grade picnic, family game night, and an end of the school year celebration. Homeroom parents host the fall festival and winter celebration parties for each classroom with teacher input. Worcester volunteers can be found monitoring the lunchroom or shelving books in the library on any given school day. Parents put countless hours into fundraising, supporting the science fair and talent show, managing the holiday workshop, and making sure the Night of the Arts showcases our students' remarkable abilities. Teachers apply for mini grants through Home and School to offset the cost of their classroom and curriculum needs. With guidance from our principal, Jason Sorgini, Home and School helps our school community to strengthen its ties and provide our students with the top-notch learning environment that Methacton is known for. Thank you.
That's all we have.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cancro, Ms. Smith. While you're coming back to your seats, I just want to remind everyone that the Home and School was instrumental in moving forward with the pavilion that is being soon to be constructed, and it was donated partially by the Home and School, brainchild of the Home and School, and we believe that that effort is going to be a significant contribution to that elementary school. So I just want to say thank you for your presentation this evening, as well as thank you for all your efforts for our children day in and day out. Thank you so much. Mr. President, that does end our presentations for this evening.
Thank you. Now let's move on to the reports. The finance report, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you. The Finance Committee held its meeting on October 12th. Start time was at 6:31, and all members of the Finance Committee were in attendance, including Dr. Zerbe. The first item discussed was the monthly reports. The list of bills, treasury report, and various other financial reports were gone over by members of the committee. The list of bills and treasury report will be up for full board approval this evening. The second item on the agenda was budgetary transfers. A list of budgetary transfers were given to the committee for the 2016-2017 school year to date. There were 14 transfers relating to the reallocation of funds for various reasons, including to purchase keyboards out of the building budget, funding proper staff development budget, reallocation of funds to the proper account code for the annual technology equipment lease, and transfer of funds for a new first grade position at Worcester. The committee asked for more details surrounding the transfer of funds regarding the Worcester position, and you will see moving forward the budgetary transfers will be on the agenda moving forward as they occur throughout the year, and will be up for a vote this evening and in the future. Next on the agenda was a discussion around the budgetary direction for the 2017-2018 school year. During this discussion, it was mentioned by Dr. Zerbe that the Act 1 index for next year will be 2.5%. And for the 2018-2019 and 2019-2020 school years will be 2.5% and 2.6% respectively. During the November Finance meeting, the members of the Finance Committee will be discussing various budgetary items with the hope to come to the November board work session and provide a discussion and budgetary direction to the administration for the following year. The fourth item discussed that night was the Facilities Assessment Study and Workbook. Dr. Zerbe gave the Finance Committee a brief overview of the AEM Facilities Workbook and its capabilities. There was discussion on how this workbook could be utilized in both current and future budgetary planning. It was noted that soft costs were not included in these numbers. In the past, it had been alluded to that they were. They are not. And there is an introduction into the draft where you will see the description on how much soft costs could be anticipated moving forward. Also, an administrative process will be developed between the Director of Facilities and the new Director of Business Services to make sure that the workbook is utilized properly. The workbook will be presented, or actually was presented at the work session last week. The next item on the agenda was the capital budget approval and planning process. This discussion focused on the Administration and Finance Committee and how they can best plan for small and large projects, which funds should be used for what types of expenditures, and how the planning and approval of these projects will be determined. This also was discussed at the October property meeting, which you'll be hearing about from Mr. Dorn later. And finally was the Director of Business Services update. Members of the administration as well as members of the Finance Committee conducted recent interviews for that position. A potential candidate had been identified, and pending some additional work by the administration will be brought to the board for a vote this evening, and that will be on the agenda for tonight. Finally was courtesy of the floor. There were 3 members of the public who had questions regarding the potential candidate for the Director of Business Services, questions regarding the budgetary transfers and list of bills, and also questions related to the audit and the teacher's contract and its impact and the direction moving forward. The meeting adjourned at 8:02. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next would be the Property Committee, Mr. Dorn.
Thank you. Meeting was held on October 10th and called to order at 6 p.m. All committee members were present. 3 major discussion topics. The first was the remaining field project matters. We've got an update from James Miller from Fidavia, who served as our project management company for part of the project. 5 major areas still need addressed. They are the swale number 4, basin number 2, Mill Road / parking improvements, the buffer improvements, and the varsity softball field. Primarily, we focused our discussion on the varsity softball field because there was an urgency to get that remediation work completed so it could be seeded in the outfield and the seed would have ample time for germination. So the discussions went pretty much as follows. The current contractor, Applied Landscaping Technologies, had failed to perform. They were given a notice and a time frame in which to respond to perform. They didn't respond by the time we initially set. The committee discussed removing the varsity softball field work from the scope of work from Applied. The cost was approximately $22,000. The district has about $320,000 in retention, so the funds would have been reappropriated to another supplier, of which we had taken some bids for. That company's name was Tomlinson Barmberger, and the committee had agreed at the meeting to bring it forward to the work session for further discussion and action if necessary, and to advertise that potential action would take place. I think we'll probably have further discussion tonight on that. Is that on the agenda?
It's not on the agenda, but I can certainly update the board, and I'll do that, my comments.
Okay. The second item was the Facility Assessment Study and Workbook. This was a piece of work that we received the draft workbook, which was an assessment of all of our facility assets across the district. We had received the draft study back in April, And since that time, there's been some analytics done, some validation of work, and in addition, there was a workbook that was created that could become the source guide of project management and financial planning for the school district. The workbook was presented to us along with the final version of the study. And in the workbook, the AEM team and Mark Fretz, who runs the facility operations for the school district, worked through how the workbook works, how we should use it for a financial planning tool. They also discussed kind of the changes they made since the draft study was presented, and they changed the introduction to advise how the workbook would be used in addition to the hard copy of the study. It should be noted, and it is noted in the study guide, that the cost for most projects will be approximately 15 to 20% more to cover soft costs, which would be, engineering, consultants, et cetera, in addition to financing costs for projects. And that workbook will be made available for the public to view. The last item was the capital budget approval planning process. Mark Fretz and Dr. Zerby walked us through a recommended timeline for proposing small and large projects, a lot of them based on the study that was done, and how it will fit into our budget schedule for planning and approval, and then moving forward from committee to the work group to the board for approval and incorporation into the budget cycle. A copy of the proposed timeline is attached to the minutes. It should be noted that in this next budget cycle, we're already behind schedule because of accepting the report, so it'll be an accelerated schedule. Then the following year, it'll follow a revised schedule, and that's noted on the plan. Lastly, courtesy of the floor, Mr. Earnshaw inquired as to when the report for the total cost of the field project would be available for the public, and also inquired about Zop Spector, who was the project engineer's status on the project due to open litigation issues. Mr. Andrews inquired about who owns the liability for the basin if it doesn't function as designed. He also sought clarification regarding the work on Mill Road, and if that was a part of the field project scope. And lastly, he inquired about the division of works as designated in the workbook. The meeting was adjourned at 8:08 p.m.
Thanks, Scott. And now on to the Education Committee. Ms. Reese.
The Education Committee met on October 5th. Meeting began at 6:30. Everyone at the committee was in attendance other than Mrs. Hackett, who finally took a night off. We also had the addition of Ms. Kokenauer from the high school to help us with the SAT, ACT, and AP results. The first discussion topic was an ESL update. Currently, there are 59 students. However, there's students currently going through the identification process, so that number can change. Of course, students can move in. There are now co-chairs to help with all the responsibilities in that department. There was a lot of curriculum work done over the summer that Dr. Katona was very pleased with, and that's part of the minutes as well. There is a parent night. The parent night occurred. Excuse me. There was a parent night on October 17th, and I believe the district sent out some information about that, and it was a great success. We are also sending staff to a national conference, since ESL is quite a large population in our district. We went on to the health and nursing report. Basically, some data and description of the services were provided. I think it would surprise people to know just quite how busy the health department is. For example, last year they handled 60,766 visits, and an additional 13,120 screenings. Cheryl Pfeiffer is the department head, as well as the president of the Pennsylvania Association of School Nurses, so we're lucky to have her. The next on the agenda was the high school class size report. Unfortunately, that was not able to be discussed in October, but will be discussed in November. Next was SAT, ACT, and AP results. This year, AP French was added. A total of 779 AP tests were taken by Methacton students, and it's the highest number to date. 92% earned a 3 or above. 71% of the students earned 4s and 5s. There will be another AP night for students and parents in February for those interested. And there was this discussion about what AP classes should be added. Currently, the high school is looking to add possibly another computer science class. There was an addition of the European History AP class, which so far has been a great success. SATs, slightly less number of students took the SAT, and that was only due to the fact that some of them are taking the ACT instead. The SAT score saw a slight increase to 1,669. And the ACT exam, Methacton is above the Pennsylvania average. A score of 24 is considered excellent, and all of the Methacton scores were 25, 26, or 27. So that was nice to hear. Next on the list was the Jump Start program. For those of you unaware of that, it's a summer program to help students going into kindergarten. 21 out of the 35 students who qualified attended the program. It's a 12-day program, and there were 14 students who showed up all 12 days, which is great. We did provide transportation to 14 of those students as well, and the district received very positive feedback. That's a great, the name of the program is Jump Start, and it is definitely a jump start to those students who qualify. Next on the agenda was curriculum approval, and attached to these minutes you'll see curriculum for English Language Arts 7-8, all the ESL work that was done over the summer, K-12, as well as world language in French, Spanish, and German. As always, we went over the enrollment update, and for courtesy of the floor, Mr. Andrews commented on enrollment, mentioned increased homes for sale, was disappointed the high school information wasn't available, and suggested that possibly we need better software. The meeting adjourned at 8:20 p.m.
Thank you, Andrea. Was anybody else trying to remember their ACT and SAT scores like I was when she was talking about it? Now we'll move. Yeah, the scales have changed, haven't they? That's my justification for my score. The Policy Committee, Ms. Aubrey Larsenese.
Thank you. The Policy Committee met on October 6th at the Farina Center at 6:30. All members of the committee were in attendance, as well as Ms. Pfeiffer from the nursing department, Dr. Brand, the district physician, Dr. Angstadt, and Dr. Zerbe. We had a number of policies discussed that evening. 13 of them are moved to first read this evening. Particular note, we had some policies that had been languishing for quite some time on our agenda that we were able to move to a first read. Of particular note, we have our membership policy up for approval this evening. One of the things that we were able to accomplish in revising this policy was outlining a clear plan for filling a vacancy on the board, should that happen. We also, with the guidance of Dr. Brand and Ms. Pfeiffer, were able to review our policies on severe allergy and anaphylaxis, food allergy management, and possession and use of inhalers. We were able to confirm that our policies are aligned with current best practices as outlined by the CDC and other nationally recognized organizations. We're able to tighten up any areas that needed it. And We had several administrative policies that were also reviewed. The meeting, we had courtesy of the floor as well, and Dr. Jennifer Hahn from Lower Providence was there, and she presented us with a good bit of information regarding alternatives to class rank and regarding policy number 214. And the meeting adjourned at 8:30.
Thank you, Kim. And now on to the IU. Ms. Hackett.
Sorry, I do not have a report.
That's a reasonable answer. On to the Monco Tech. Back to you, Ms. Reese.
The JOC met on October 17th, the same night as the ESL. That's where my confusion was on the ESL evening. First, they shared with us an inspirational speaker that they brought in for the students, and I just wanted to share his name if anyone wanted to look him up. His name is Eric Moss, and he's a strong man, and he spoke specifically about being bullied as a child, and he now makes sculpture out of rebar, and now that I'm part of the VOTEC committee, it's really fascinating. This man made this sculpture bending this rebar, which people cannot bend rebar, but this man can. So they highly suggested we look into, if anyone's interested or in that field, and looking into him as an inspirational speaker. It's Eric Moss. And the children loved it, who saw the assembly and were able to meet with him. The biggest piece of news was just enrollment by district, and just to give all of you a little bit of an idea, there's 1,009 students enrolled at North Monco Technical Career Center. Methacton has 134 of those students, which is 13%. In addition, with this enrollment came a very lengthy discussion about the scheduling and how difficult it is to send students from 5 different schools. And it was brought to our attention that the superintendents are doing their best to hopefully be able to schedule a little bit better. It's impossible to get the same start dates and the same end dates, but they're looking at hopefully getting some of the days off in the middle of the year, staff development days, to be the same, because it does become quite challenging. And they've tried many different things. And that's really was the gist of our meeting that evening.
Great, thank you, Andrea. And now on to our student board representatives.
Thank you. So earlier this month with Homecoming, where events included Spirit Week and the dance on Friday. On Saturday morning, we had the 2nd annual parade, which featured performances from the marching band and cheerleaders, and celebrated the 50-year reunion of the Methacton class of 1966. We also had our first parade marshal, Methacton grad and Paralympic gold medalist Michelle Conkley. The 53rd National Honor Society induction occurred this past Thursday, with 42 of Methacton's best and brightest juniors and seniors joining the society, so congratulations to them. And 15 Methacton seniors were recently recognized as semifinalists in the National Merit Scholarship Competition. Out of more than 1 million entrants nationwide, our seniors were some of the 50,000 students who scored the highest on their PSATs last year. They can now compete for national merit and corporate scholarships, so congrats to them as well.
So to touch on some of more extracurricular things that have been happening around the high school, the Methacton Theater Company will be presenting Romeo and Juliet on November 10th and 11th, 12th, November 10th, 11th, and 12th, but it is a modern twist on Romeo and Juliet. Also, the sports teams at Methacton have been doing very well recently. The boys golf team was led by Kyle Vance to their 4th straight Pac-10 championships. Boys cross country placed 4th place at their Pac-10 championships out of 11 teams. The girls field hockey team is currently ranked 4th in the district, and football has a game this Saturday against PJP.
Thank you. And now on to communications, Ms. Lynn.
Good evening. On November 4th, during our final evening game of the boys varsity football team, we will unveil the Warrior Pride Capital Campaign donor wall. So during a very brief ceremony during halftime, we will unveil several panels that list the names of those who supported this incredible community effort. So we're really looking forward to one of these final sort of culminating events as part of that campaign as it reaches its final stages. As part of the district's strategic planning goals around strategic objectives for communications, the responsive design for the district's template is now being rolled out and on sites throughout this week. It has been rolled out on the homepage as well as the secondary schools, Skyview and Arrowhead and Arcola, of course. And it basically allows the district's website to respond based on the screen size of varying devices. So if you have a mobile device that you use to access the website or you have a tablet, the site will reconfigure its homepage as well as its menus to allow it to be very user-friendly and will really be much more state-of-the-art and technologically up-to-date. Thank you.
Thank you. And now on to the superintendent's report, Dr. Zerbe.
I just want to mention that Ms. Lynch has done an excellent job with the effort and getting that website up to date. So I want to thank her personally and professionally here in public, because it's a tremendous amount of work. But I think at the end of the day, we'll all be pleased with the results, because we'll be able to, surf a lot more conveniently and quicker using all the mobile devices that are kind of infiltrating our lives these days. But certainly the information that's on the district website is important for us and important for our community. As part of my update, I'll start with field update, just as a follow-up to the minutes from the property committee. While we met at the work session and we voted at the work session as properly advertised on the matter to give me permission to, if necessary, move forward with an alternative vendor to complete the varsity softball field in the instance that the original contracted vendor fails to perform. While the vendor did show on Friday, they had failed to produce the type of result consistent with that of the scope of work, and therefore we have engaged and are currently finalizing the schedule for Thomason to produce, to come on board and do some work. It should be noted that one of the concerns as part of our discussion was whether or not the matter required a bid or did not require a bid, and I wanted to make sure that we clarify that so that the board understands, the action that I had taken. As you may recall from the property committee meeting, there were 2 quotes associated with portions of the work needed to be completed. The first portion was the actual reworking of the field, which was work that would take place in the fall of this year or within this month of October, possibly now October, November, which approximately cost about $18,000. That work was properly put out for quotes, and we received responses on those quotes, and Thomason was the best acceptable quote as part of that process. We then went ahead and as a need to say that we needed additional work done likely in the spring season once thaw occurs and the grass begins to be rejuvenated, that there may be some additional work needed. That quote was in the amount of about $3,000, and therefore, when we were speaking last week in terms of the overall potential cost, that cost did exceed the $19,400 that we spoke of. However, some of the work that can be done in the spring can be done by the district. And so we are in the process of reevaluating that need for the spring, but are in a position to move forward with the work here in the fall to get that done under the requirements for getting the service completed and getting the fields completed. So I just wanted to make it clear that everyone knows that the action that you took last week was acted upon, and I will keep the board and the public apprised of our progress on that field. Most importantly, as you know, and the reason why we've had all these discussions is to make sure that we get these fields ready and get them playable for the start of the 2017 PIAA season, which generally begins near the beginning of March. Next on my list of items that I'd like to speak about is I'd like to give an update on the Mylone and McBroom Phase 2 project. So the Phase 2 of the Mylone and McBroom study continues. As per the timeline, Mylone and McBroom representatives will present an enrollment and capacity report on November 1st. That presentation will be held at Arcola. I believe it's scheduled for 7 o'clock. Scheduled for 7 o'clock at the Arcola Auditorium. It is planned that these reports will be made available to the public in advance of the meeting to allow for members of the public to ask questions where needed. Mylone and McBroom will continue into November with redistricting options. This timeline is focused on providing recommendations to the board for their consideration and potential decisions in January of 2017. On the update of transportation, I can share that most of our major issues have been resolved. However, there are still specific three outstanding issues that are related to non-public private school matters that remain. There are a total of 91 total routes with 87 regular drivers, 8 substitutes, and a training class of 8 just starting. Dr. Harney has been actively preparing options for consideration of the future administrative oversight and routing, and we intend to bring some recommendations forward, if possible, here in November. Under strategic planning, I just want to advise the board and the public that I plan to communicate with the public on the status of our efforts in strategic planning. In this month's Community Conversation e-newsletter that I put out monthly, I will be updating everyone on the actions to date and plans going forward to address the goals and engage stakeholders in helping us grow Methacton. And lastly, the Director of Business Services. Later on this evening, the board will be asked to approve my recommendation for the Director of Business Services. This evening, Mr. Thomas Klaus is recommended for your approval as the Director of Business Services as stipulated in the motion on the agenda. Mr. Klaus is experience included work as a governance, risk, and compliance consultant, auditor, accountant, and tax preparer. He lends his financial expertise in many matters, including tax returns, cash flow management, third-party vendor oversight, payroll supervision, and as a volunteer for the Harleysville Community Center and Junior Chamber of Commerce. In his past experience, Mr. Klaus has held several senior positions related to compliance and auditing. In all, he has more than 30 years of experience in the field of audit and finance. I am pleased to recommend Thomas Klaus of Harleysville, PA, for your consideration this evening. With your approval, I will welcome Thomas to Methacton's administrative team. That ends my report.
All right, thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Now on to public comment related to the board action items. Do we have any? Go ahead.
Good evening. John Andrews, Lower Providence. One of the items on the agenda this evening is the SRO, and I think it's important in terms of any revisions of the earlier plans that the board voted on, that the budget be maintained for the because budget overruns have credit implications on all of the district's borrowing activities. I also note that the SRO program was approximately a decade old, and in the interim that there's improved door security, which tends to reduce the need for having security in a building where it's consequently harder to get into the building, and that nationwide the current estimate is that 30% of schools have security agents. It's not 100%. And I think the discussion of last week where Mr. McFarland, supervisor of Lower Providence, kicked it off, that it shows that Lower Providence financial issues, where they're currently in the budget for the next calendar year, in my mind, is the reason why he kicked it off, rather than someone at Methacton kicking it off because of the, an opinion that we need full-time police officers. With regard to the repository sale, the property at 20 Mill Road, last week Mr. Roth looked up on Zillow that it has a market value of $550,000, whereas the letter from the county asking for our approval of the sale said very clearly that the future assessment on the property would be the $500. And I think that the Moyer landfill, which is most of the 60 acres of the property, should be separated from the large house that is on the lot, and as evidence of the house being livable, another member of the public visited there and noticed that the house has a whole complete set of brand new windows, so someone is taking care of it and may have desire to live there. But and the letter from the county didn't give a deadline, but I think that waiting on a side discussion here. So I don't know whether the state law is loosely written or whatever, but I think should be an opportunity for Methacton to negotiate relative to the assessment. So
Can you finish up, please?
Maybe we can get the solicitor input on that. And my last item is with regard to the new Director of Business Services. I'm thinking a trial period may be warranted based on problems that the district has had with administrative hires over the last few years. I certainly wish the person the best in performing here, but we want to have a successful person also. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Joe Bickelman, Audubon. I just have a question regarding the employment of the Director of Business Services. The $130,000, is that his annual salary? That's his annual salary? So he'll receive a fractional portion of that from now till, well, whenever he's on board. So the $130,000 is his annual salary, right? Right?
That is correct.
Correct? All right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Candy Oliver, Eagleville. The facilities assessment study, is the copies going to be available for the public, or do we have to come up to Farina and sit and read a 200-page novel? I mean, because honestly, I don't have that kind of time during the day to come up, and I was just curious how it was going to be available to the public, since it looks really thick. So
I think anybody interested in accessing the information, whether the study or the workbook, should contact Ms. Lynch in the administrative office, and we'll make plans to address your needs.
But can we like sign out a copy like you do at the library and then return it?
Again,
figure that out.
Certainly that could be an option, but what I suggest is just contact her either through an email or a phone call, and we'll be glad to make arrangements for you.
Okay. And as far as repository sale, I think there needs to be a lot more information put out there. I'm aware where the property is. I would be able to see that house if they wanted to build a development in front of it. Mr. Andrews wants to see if he could separate, you can't separate the house from the 60 acres. That house belongs on the 60 acres. And it's butts up to Moyer's landfill. That was the entrance to the landfill when they were using it. My husband's very well aware of the history of that home. I can't imagine why anyone would allow it to go for $500. I don't know if any studies have been done to see if that property is contaminated, but I'm sure dollars to donuts, it is. But I checked, I did a little homework the day after the meeting and looked into it, went to the Tax Claim Bureau. I just found it interesting that the owners of the property, I couldn't find any information on them. And it was a little ironic, they were the Grange Environmental Group that owns property next to a toxic landfill. So I think maybe there should be some, legal opinions on this, but I think for $500 when their property is assessed a lot more, that just sounds like you're giving away a lot of money. I think that's something you need to look into. And I also would like to know if, since the letter stated that the board has to be in agreement with this, what are the ramifications if you don't agree with the prospective sale? What happens after that? Because I'm even curious if the township received a letter, since they taxed the property too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Public comment?
This is just public comments about the meeting tonight.
Just the action items. The public comment at the end of the meeting is where you talk about anything. Okay, moving along. Okay, the first action item is, may I have a motion to approve the board meeting minutes for the September 27th meeting that are attached and the September 20th meeting that are attached? Second? Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? All right, good. Now moving on to the fiscal items. Dr. Zerby.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the agenda this evening are a list of bills, treasurer's report, budgetary transfers, facility assessment study, the SRO program, reimbursement resolution 16-02, and the repository tax sale.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the list of bills, the treasurer's report, and the budgetary transfers? Second? Okay. Any discussion related to those? Yeah.
Just one quick one in terms of the repository tax sale. We are, just to clarify, the last of the... Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. Any comments on the first three? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Nope. Okay, good. Now moving on to the facilities assessment. So accept the study dated April 2016 associated workbook dated October 2016 as presented by the AEM architects. May I have a motion to accept the facilities assessment? Second? Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Good. The SRO program. Now, this action item is to authorize the administration to pursue solicitation of agents for the SR program as presented. May I have a motion to approve the authorization? Second? Any discussion? Yeah.
The way I remembered our discussion from last week, there was additional information that several of us had asked for. I know in particular, I was looking for information on the amount of money that we've spent on security, an outside security agent that we have for athletic events and things like that. Do we have any more information than what was presented to us last week?
We do not have that information for this evening, but we will have that information as part of the overall report after the solicitation of the RFI and those results are returned. And it's our intent to bring back all that information to the board for their consideration. And so we'll include those budgetary items that what you're referring to is we currently use security for special events like athletic events, and we will include those budgetary items and those costs in that overall calculations for the overall consideration.
I have a quick question, and I apologize, I missed the work session. I went through the presentation and I watched the video, but I have to say, watching the video is not the same as being in this room. So just to make it clear for myself, we're authorizing the administration to meet with Lower Providence, but there's... And that's where I was confused, and other organizations. Okay, that's where I was confused.
Yes, so let me just clarify that for everyone so that, we're all on the same page. Certainly, Lower Providence, we want, your permission to talk to them, but as well as we're going to create an RFI that's going to request similar services for a full-time SRO officer at the high school, a semi-full-time / part-time services at the intermediate level, and then some augmented services for times on both the Arcola Skyview campus and the high school campus for when the SROs typically don't participate. And then we're going to bring that information back, inclusive of all the other budgetary items associated with our existing cost, to help leverage the best decision possible for the district going forward.
So I just want to make sure on that, Dr. Zerbe, so the responses we'll get back to the board for consideration will be a Lower Providence solution similar to what it is, but maybe a slightly revised scope, an independent firm doing a similar scope, potentially a hybrid of the two, and then something that would also include the special activities, athletic activities that require after-hours security. So,
one more thing would be some budgetary numbers around us employing our own staff, so we have that as a comparison as well.
Okay, and where will that be derived from? The fourth option, so Methacton hiring its own, police force.
Well, that'll be more along the lines of an estimate associated with that option. That in my opinion is not a prime option for us at this moment in time. While it might be a discussion long-term down in the future, based on the time frame that we're in and the pending termination of the agreement with Lower Providence at this moment in time, I don't think that's the right choice for us. So some agreement that includes our recommendation here last Tuesday, as well as the potential considerations of private providers to help us meet the structure and the framework that we suggested last Tuesday. Those combinations of things are the things that we need to consider. So we plan to have that RFI out on the street as soon as this week to hopefully get that information back and then to provide it back to you for consideration at the next work session in November.
And the goal will be to bring in the cost at or around what's in the budget.
That's accurate.
And I think when we put all that information together, the budget number we have in our heads is $200,000, but what that doesn't include is all those ancillaries, covering off on the evening events and stuff. So, when we see the full budget numbers and the full cost, that will be included, so that we can understand the full picture, because there will be maybe some consolidation of services into one. And as Dr. Zerbe said, the expectation is to have that before the next work session so we can review it, have a discussion at the next work session, and then vote on it at the next regular meeting. Okay?
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Dr. Zerbe, one question I would want answered for that work session is trying to understand if anything changed in the SRO program since 2012 to today, besides the amount that we pay Lower Providence. So my understanding is that the Lower Providence fee was $225,000 about 4 years ago and is now $299,000. I would like to know if anything changed in the product. Thank you.
Okay. And in addition to that, I think there will also be a conversation about, depending on the options available to us for consideration, again, what may we be giving up that we currently have versus what we would be choosing in terms of those options. So that's another part of this puzzle as well.
Well,
any other?
One more. So I know the 3 administrators who presented are heavily involved in the process, as well as Dr. Zerbe. Is there anybody else involved in the process of getting the information collected and bringing it to us?
No, not at this time.
All right, all those in favor? The motion passes. Good. Item number F, reimbursement resolution 16-02. May I have a motion to approve the reimbursement resolution for technology purchases? Second? Any discussion?
Just perhaps to reiterate what we said last week, this is for a significant amount of money, and it seems to me that purchases are made across the year. And if I understand correctly, Dr. Zerbe, you indicated that we would be approving the purchases prior to items being purchased through the authorization of payments.
That's not, I know we had some dialogue about that at the meeting last week. You asked me if the district authorizes those purchases, and I said, yes, we do. We do that as part of the list of bills. And I think that, but for the most part, you do in terms of the bulk of those purchases, because we authorize the purchase of the Chromebooks as a new one-to-one program at the high school with its eventual progression down into the Arcola school as well. So I just want to be clear that you typically don't authorize the purchase in advance of them actually being purchased. On an item-by-item basis, but in general, the bulk of those purchases and the focus of technology for our procurement process is through your approval.
You mentioned the Chromebook program for the high school. We did approve that in advance, and that was a significant dollar amount. But if there are significant dollar amounts that are in excess of what can be done without getting bids or without getting board approval, we will see those before they are purchased.
You typically do. I don't see why you wouldn't, but...
Yeah, I agree. Just getting a heads up on those and being informed of those ahead of time and being able to understand the spend is, I think, an important point. Thanks for bringing that up, Brenda. Any other? Okay. All those in favor? All right, motion passes. G, the repository tax sale. May I have a motion to approve the repository tax sale as outlined by the Montgomery County Tax Claim Bureau in the letter dated September 26th of this year for the property located at 20 Moyer Road, Collegeville, Pennsylvania, in Lower Providence Township, 430009451001. I don't know if I had to say that. I just wanted to try to say it. May I have a motion? Second. Any discussion? Go ahead.
Just one quick one. It had been mentioned before that I believe we are the last of the governmental agencies that need to sign off on that. Is that correct? And if that is true, can you list who else has already signed off on this?
It's my understanding that that's correct, that we are voting here. Is that better? That's better. Okay. It is my understanding that we are the last to sign off. The three taxing authorities that would have jurisdiction here would be Montgomery County, would be the township where the property is located, which I assume is Lower Providence, and the school district. They would be the three.
Thank you.
So, and maybe Frank, you can educate us a little bit on, you know, the property as Herb looked it up last week being worth, you know, more than $500K, and this sale at $500. What's the process to get it reassessed? You know, obviously it has a value, at least in somebody's world, of a lot more, that we can, you know, get the proper tax revenue that should be warranted. And I don't know the property other than its location, so, you know, perhaps it is contaminated, maybe it's not. Hard to say. Most likely it is based on the location in the landfill, but that's not our job. The question really for me is, if it's got a significantly higher value, you know, the district and the township, quite frankly, are losing revenue.
Yeah, obviously a very good question. Let me back up just a moment, if I can, to explain what's going on this evening, because I think there might be some misunderstanding with respect to what's going on. You're in the third stage of a tax sale on this property. The first thing that happens is there is an upset sale that's scheduled. The upset sale takes care of the particular tax in question and does not divest with respect to the liens, mortgages, etc., that are not the tax for which the property is being sold. If the property does not sell at that time with all of the liens attached to it, with the exception of the tax in question, and doesn't satisfy that tax, then you move to the second stage, which is a judicial sale. At the judicial sale stage, all of the other liens are gone as well. So the property is then offered for sale. So as you can see, this has been through two stages already, where if the property had the kind of value and it was known and in the marketplace that it had that kind of value, probably wouldn't have made it to the third stage. The third stage is the repository stage, where effectively it gets thrown in a bin. And somebody then can make an offer with respect to that property, and that's what's happened in this stage. There may be other ones as well. Now, from that stage, that tells you a little bit about how far down the road you are with respect to this. But more importantly to the school district, as I looked at this property, there's a $910 assessment on this property. Now, that assessment tells you what the Board of Assessment Appeals market value belief is as of 1/1 of 1998. Now, across all of Montgomery County, the common level ratio for this year is about 56.1%. Not about, that's what the number is. So basically, I use 0.56 and divide that into the 910, and I asked Dave to do that on his calculator. That's what we were talking about, which comes out to a market value, an indicated market value of $1,622. That's what the property has been being taxed at while it was owned by the owner that lost it. That equates to about $26 in school tax per year, or $31 in total tax per year. So you can see that when somebody offers $500, this property would have had to be in that repository for an awful long time for the school district not to recoup what its share of the taxes are. You just don't have that much money in this pot in terms of what's owed to the school district, which is why we kind of gave it short shrift with respect to advising you that it was okay to sign off on this, because you just a half hour of attorney's fees and you paid for whatever it is here. So we didn't bother to do more than that. Your best job right now is to get this property back onto the tax rolls. When this property then goes back onto the tax rolls, as you know, Methacton generally does a pretty good job of each year going through and trying to select properties that we believe are under-assessed in the district, and this board then approves the filing of what are referred to as reverse appeals with respect to those properties. This may or may not be one of them, depending upon what the location of this is, what can be built here, what the situation may be or may not be with respect to contamination, the environmental situation on this property, and all of those type things. But that is the process that is used in Methacton and many other school districts to get these properties back online and getting them to the level that they need to be so that they're paying their fair share of school taxes.
Thanks for the explanation.
Sure.
I understand it better now, thanks. Any more comment? All right, all those in favor? Okay, motion passes. Now, moving right along, we have the personnel items. Dr. Harney?
I'm just going to take over for a second for Dr. Harney. On under personnel items, under 10C, employment administrative, the motion reads, approve the employment contract for Thomas Klaus as Director of Business Services, salary at $130,000 prorated, effective date to be determined. This is a replacement position. I ask that the board consider this item now separately, and then if approved, I'd like to introduce Mr. Klaus and his wife.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the employment contract? Second. Any comments? All those in favor? All right. All those who really want him to start right now, this very second. Let me be the first to officially congratulate you, Tom and Jill. We welcome you to, our school district. We're very, very excited to have you join us. We've grown to appreciate the role of the director of business every day as we've been having that vacancy. So we appreciate it more and more every day, and we're happy to get you to work. And this is the first time I've been meeting you tonight, but I've been hearing wonderful things from all the administration and the finance committee about what a great fit you are for us. So welcome. Any budget questions for him before he sits down? Thanks. This is very exciting for us. All right, shall we pass it all back to...
Well, one more. I just want to introduce his wife. Jill is with him this evening, and I believe some of his extended family. Thank you so much for cheering Thomas on this evening, and most certainly you're welcome to stay and join us for the rest of the meeting, or if you so choose to exit, you can certainly do that now as you see fit. All right, thank you very much. Now we should turn the microphone over to Dr. Harney.
Yes, this evening we have 2 employment classifieds for your approval. We have 1 compensated professional development leave for your approval. We have 2 uncompensated leave professional, 1 uncompensated leave classified, and this is in addition to this agenda this week. It was not on last week. We have 10 supplemental contracts, and number 4 on this list is newly added this week. We have 3 additions to our classified substitute list. We have our approved list of volunteers that's attached to your agenda. And we have 1 employment community education. We have 3 community education employments this evening, and 1 advisement. Excuse me.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion to approve all the personnel items as presented? Second. Any discussion? Okay, no discussion. All those in favor? Motion passes. Good. Now moving on to the curriculum and programs. Dr. Katona.
Good evening.
On the agenda this evening for your approval are several items related to curriculum. We have the ELA curriculum for grades 7 and 8, world language for all levels of French, including honors, for German levels 1 through 5, and Spanish honors levels 2 through 4, as well as Spanish 1 through 4 with Spanish 5 to come at a later date, and the approval of the ESL curriculum for the various areas as presented here.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the curriculum as presented? All right, second. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Great, motion passes. Moving right along, Dr. Zerbe, on to the policy. Just as a note, Brenda would like to take the class rank and the unlawful harassment separately. Is there anybody else that wants to take any of the other ones separately before we get into it? Okay, then that will be it.
This evening, there are 13 policies for first reading, and then for your approval, there are a total of 7 policies, and we ask for your approval this evening of those 7. Thank you.
May I have a motion to approve all the second readings except for 1 and 5 that we'll take separately? Second? Any discussion on all of those? Okay. All those in favor? And those pass. May I have a motion to approve the second reading policy 214, class rank? Second? Okay. Discussion?
I was raising a question about the class rank policy, given that many schools don't currently include class rank in their reports to colleges, and whether our students are unfairly compared to other schools when class rank is included, when they may be honors or AP students, and consequently some students who are not taking those burdensome classes may wind up ranking ahead of them. And I wondered if there is, what our feeling is about the impact that that has on our students.
So some other schools might do a weighted average across whether it's academic, AP, or honors?
Well, I understand that some schools don't even include class rank anymore.
Oh, they don't do class rank. Do you have, Kim?
That was actually a topic that did come up for discussion at the last policy meeting. This particular policy wasn't on the agenda anymore because it had already moved to the second reading. But the information that was provided to us during courtesy of the floor discussed a lot of that. I'm not sure how we proceed, but if it's the wishes of the board, I would be comfortable moving it off of second reading and bringing it back to the committee for further discussion, if that's what the board wishes to do.
So it sounds like there is a potential trend where schools don't provide class ranking. Is that what the discussion is?
Well, let me just explain this. This is not a decision that we can make this evening, whether or not we change the way we do class rank or not do class rank. What I can tell you is that while we did receive some information from a member of the community just recently at our most recent policy committee meeting, those are things that we need to consider. But this evening, we're talking about a policy that is consistent with what our practice is going to be, and we're asking you to approve that. That doesn't preclude us from making changes in the future if, in fact, we need to go down that path. So, 6 months from now, we can revisit class rank and we can make changes if we feel necessary. I think the question, if I may just clarify, Ms. Hackett, is that your concern is whether or not our students are being unfairly compared to others, considering that class rank is on the transcript? Is that what your interpretation is? Now, Ms. Katona, do we know whether or not class rank is listed on our transcript? Because some of the information that I have from the high school guidance suggests that it may not be listed. However, we still do class rank in terms of having a rank system within the school. And therefore, what we do send to colleges are a listing of what's called a high school profile, which goes along with every transcript so that the admissions offices at college can see the rigor of the types of courses that the students obtain grades in.
It is my understanding, based on information from the principal, that it is not listed on the transcript.
Ms. Hackett, is that your concern? I wasn't sure I understood it correctly, but that's what I thought you had.
That was my concern. But it says in the policy, a student's grade point average and rank in class shall be entered on the student's record and transcripts, and shall be subject to board policy on release of student records. So there's a conflict, I guess.
Really just get rid of that transcript.
No, what we should do is what I think Ms. Larzanis has recommended. Let us take that back and make that change. That I wasn't clear on. So we should do that, and we'll do a double check. It doesn't hurt us. I mean, it's not a.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt us to pull that back. That's a good recommendation.
So if we're pulling it back, I guess I have a question. Is there a need to really establish class rank if colleges aren't necessarily looking at it or we're not providing it? What's the purpose of it?
Again, I think it's a larger discussion that needs to have and be held within the district, and that is prepared appropriately for discussion with the board and with the public. But because it is something that, while it has been tradition, doesn't necessarily mean we need to keep tradition. But just because some districts don't do it today doesn't necessarily mean that Methacton, it's right for Methacton to do it today. So I think there has to be some discussion. I'm certainly not prepared to have that or even lead that discussion this evening. My suggestion is we take Ms. Larson-Neese's recommendation, pull it back to the policy committee, make sure that the policy reflects what we actually do, and therefore bring it back to the board, keeping consistent our policies, and work towards having further discussions in the future on whether class rank or some other mechanisms need to be considered as part of this high school transcripts / courses and levels, and et cetera.
And should those discussions that occur in whatever time frame we decide, is that an education committee discussion? Is that where that would start?
I would recommend that be the education committee, and then with a recommendation to the policy committee for potential changes and recommendations.
One question is, the policy committee recommended this to us. What was the vote? Was it a 3-0 vote in favor of putting this policy forward?
Yeah. Jim, if I could address that, yes, it was my recollection. It's basically exactly how Dr. Zerbe had said it too, that we were comfortable with the way that this policy looked now, but there was a definite need for the administration to go back and look at this and basically come back with some type of analysis of their own. Yet we were given some information from a member of the public, and we need some time to vet that and to read that through. And that's my recollection on how that meeting ended. That this is something that we have to revisit, but it's not something that we can change at the drop of the hat by just saying that we're not going to approve this policy.
Okay. The only reason I ask that is if there was a dissenting vote, I'd like to know what that dissenting vote had to say about why they voted against the recommendation. But being that the committee recommends it, with no dissenting vote, I have no problem approving the policy.
Yeah, just to be clear, I'm recommending, based on our discussions, even that we do pull it back for looking at that particular language, because while I'm not suggesting we change our practice at this moment in time, I want to make sure that our policy reflects the practice, and therefore I think it deserves another look. And just to be clear, we approved this as a committee, and then I believe in September, and then in October, we had a meeting where there was a member of the public that brought the item up. So it was already considered and voted upon as a committee to move it forward as it currently stands. So it's my recommendation that we table this item, take it back to the committee, and then that, if it's the pleasure of the president, we move on to item number 5, the unlawful harassment item.
Well, we have a motion.
I move to table that. One second.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All those in favor of tabling it? All right, let's move along then. Okay, now let's move on to the unlawful harassment policy. May I have a motion to approve the policy 248, unlawful harassment? Second? Discussion? Why don't you lead it off, Brenda?
Okay. I just had a question concerning the appeal procedure for this policy. There's a clear explanation of an appeal procedure if the complainant is not happy with the solution, but there is no appeal procedure for the accused to appeal, and I wondered if that was a problem for us.
You ask the tough questions, Brenda. That's interesting.
I know that a lot of this policy came from PSBA, which is vetted through their lawyers, so I don't know if that is any consolation, because I can't answer your question for myself.
Yeah, it's a valid question. Can we just table it and kind of validate that it's pretty, it really reflects their policy, and then if it does, then we'll assume that it's appropriate. Okay. Can I have a motion to table it?
I move to table.
Okay, second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, motion to table passes. All right, now we're moving on to Dr. Zerbe, the gifts and donations and trips.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the trips, approve the trip for the Methacton High School girls basketball team to Wildwood, New Jersey, December 29th through the 30th, at a cost of district $300 in registration fee. That ends items under other.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the trip to Wildwood, New Jersey for the Methacton High School girls basketball team? Second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Motion passes. Good. Now we're on to the dates for the board members. The next meeting is the town hall meeting scheduled for the 27th. Just a little bit more about that. I know there's some discussion going on about the timing of it and why are we having the meeting before we get the enrollment projections and everything. I talked to several of the board members, and it was a common belief that we should have time to map out a process of how we're going to go through all the decisions we have. So we have declining enrollment. What does that mean? We have large, thick binder of expenses or cost to fix up our buildings. What does that mean in the process? We have unbalanced elementary schools. What does that mean to the process and the decisions we make? So we wanted to have a town hall meeting where we discuss our decision process to consume or digest all the information and make a decision about the long-term future of the school district and how we're going to do things. We wanted to have that in a town hall meeting because we want the public to participate, because your input's critical to that process. So it's going to be more of a working session where we're going to start with a list of topics and what are within those categories, what are the decision process we want to make. And then once we receive the M&M study and we start digesting all the other data, then we can follow that process that we put in place. And it'll include, and we want to be able to, call out assumptions that we want to make, like class size and all these other things while we're working our way through the process. So that's the reason of the town hall meeting. We wanted to be very transparent. We didn't want people to think that we were having these meetings behind closed doors and putting processes in place without the public being aware of it. And we wanted to have it before we get the first big study, which is the M&M study, and start working through all that, okay? So that's a little bit more detail on that. If you're still unsure of the reason for the town hall meeting, or if you have any suggestions, feel free to email me directly, okay? Then we have on November 1st, the special board meeting. That one, again, is going to be at Arcola, like the town hall meeting, because we aren't sure how widely that's going to be attended. And that's where M&M's going to come in and talk about the study, as Dr. Zerbe said. And the public's going to have that study ahead of time, like the board is, so we can review it. And as they're talking, we're going to be able to have a dialogue with them, ask our questions, and make sure we understand where we're at going forward. Then we're going to have a lot of our regular meetings. We're going to have the policy committee meeting on the 3rd of November. On the 7th, we'll have the education committee. The 9th, we'll have the finance committee. 14th, we'll have the property committee. Then on the 15th, we'll have our next board work session. And then November 22nd, we'll have our board meeting. And December 5th, we'll have our reorganization meeting. I can't believe we already have dates in December on our schedule here. All right. In terms of old business, do we have anything under there?
I do not. Chris,
Okay.
Just one clarification on the question. Since we do not have the final M&M presentation, do we have an estimation of the exact date that it will be provided to the board and to the public?
Do not have an exact date.
Somewhere
We're trying to get it
after the 27th, but before the 1st.
The conversation today with Mylon and McBroom is that they're in the final stages of getting that document prepared and sent to us. Okay. But it may be this week. I'm thinking it should be.
Okay.
Let's make it because the meeting where they're going to present is next Tuesday, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So let's make sure we get it by the end of this week.
Again, I want to get it to the public and you as soon as I can. I can't produce it for them. So I just want to, I hear what you're saying and I agree, and I will work to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Just real quick, I thought there was a date that we asked for that by. I just can't remember.
The draft study, we asked for a date by the end of August, and we received that.
Yeah.
That was the draft study.
How about the final?
No.
Not a date?
No.
Okay. Under new business, the only topic there we have is the superintendent goals. Do we have, anybody have comments or provide feedback on that at this time?
I'll start. Listen, in my opinion, I think the goals are a little too, benign. I don't think they're detailed enough, and I'm not sure how we go and measure them. I also see some gaps with some things that maybe we should be thinking about too, preparation for the upcoming contracts, I see nothing that really ties into the performance of our schools as a part of the goals, and, holding the administration and the superintendent accountable for that. I don't see anything that talks about the meeting or exceeding the budget. So I think these goals are a start, but they don't seem to me to be comprehensive enough to measure the performance of the superintendent or the district.
Okay, thanks for that feedback. I'll work on that with Dave. And anybody else? Any other comments?
Just one quick one. I also had the one addition of the contract language, something along the lines of successful completion of, yeah, exactly. So something along the lines of the 3 contracts completed, in time. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike. We'll work on that. Very good.
I also wanted to comment particularly on the school performance and the stretch for that. I know in our strategic plan, and I know that Dr. Zerbe is working on that we are expecting that we will do everything to improve student performance, but it seems to me that there should be some language about that specifically in goals.
Okay, good. Okay, maybe we can tie some of that to kind of the highest level bonus or increased performance, like the exceeds type things. We can talk through that.
I will just add, you have to be very careful, just like you have to be with educators on student performance, because how it is evaluated is still in the works. And when we get, as we know right now, SPP scores are not accurate this year. That's why they've all been pulled back. So I just caution you that when we put student performance to a number for teachers and to administrators, we must be very careful, because this is why there's too much testing going on in education. So I would just, it is an issue in education in general. It is very difficult to evaluate numbers-wise, and I know many of you are numbers people, and I respect that. However, we pressure our top administrator to tie his evaluation to a student number. That is going to trickle down, so I just be wary of that in the goals, because education is not a business. So I just want to make that clear, that we need to be very careful in those regards.
I think that's a good point, is, Harrisburg tends to change all the metrics on us on a annual basis, and, in some years everything plummets and it has nothing to do with the students or the staff of the school district. But I think the notion of tying something to the educational process makes sense, while recognizing the less than perfect system we have for scoring things. So Dave and I will work on that, and then we'll get that back to everybody. Thank you for the comments. Appreciate it. Okay, we don't have anything else under new business, do we? All right. Now we'll open it up to courtesy of the floor.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Zerbe. Do y'all remember me? Anybody? You do? Nobody else? Oh, God, I left such a bad impression last time. My name's Robert DePort. My address is 960 Rittenhouse Road, Audubon, PA. My email address is teamchildren@teamchildren.com. So the first thing is I run a sort of grassroots, underfunded, understaffed nonprofit program that in the last 20 years has managed to distribute more than 14,000 computers to family schools and organizations. I'm still waiting on one district to take on the challenge to ensure that every family in their district has a computer at home. And in 20 years, I failed to do that. Lots of other things I failed at, but that's okay, I'm going to keep after it. Second thing is, last time I was here, I told you that at one time, this district used to give us computers, and I can't tell you the value of those computers. The value of a computer in someone's home, I'll tell you about the very first computer we distributed, went to a family at 9th and Indiana. It's called the Badlands in North Philadelphia. And this summer, one of their 6 children graduated Millersville University because he had a computer that he could stay in his house and play on because he didn't have a neighborhood where he could go out and play. And that's just one of the thousands of success stories we've had. I'm a Vietnam veteran. Anybody here a Vietnam veteran? Nope. World War II, Korea? Okay. So 51 years ago, on Saturday, the first African-American awarded the Medal of Honor in the Vietnam War was a man named Milton Olive. He was actually a boy. And he was from segregated Lexington, Mississippi. I was from segregated Charleston, South Carolina. There was no such thing in Charleston, South Carolina as a civil war. It's called the War of Northern Aggression. And he and I did not get along too well together, and we had to solve that problem. So we went behind our tent, and he beat the white out of me, I beat the black out of him. The only thing left were men whose lives depended on each other. About a month later, we were on a mission. We got ambushed. He jumped on a hand grenade and blew himself up, and I helped carry him out of the jungle. So now that we've demonstrated that we can reliably distribute computers to people that can't afford them, we're going to launch an initiative for veterans, starting Veterans Day. So if we could get this district, instead of sending your computers to a recycler, which is what actually happens to them, you may get a little bit of money for them, but the amount of money you get for them versus the value they could provide to some family, either in this county, this district, or whatever, is priceless. So that's that. And then the last thing is, I don't know if this is the last thing, but I had the pleasure of writing 4 recommendations this summer for 4 of your, National Honor Society. And every year we get students from Acton volunteering, but we need more. So I don't know who I should talk to, where I should go, how I can get this district's endorsement of our project to transform the achievement gap through ending the digital divide. Anybody got an idea?
In terms of the volunteering, I recommend that right behind you, Ms. Lynch will take your name, and we will have someone from the high school reach out to you. In terms of the computers that I know that we've participated with you to a great extent in the past.
Yes.
And that was when we were purchasing equipment. And we no longer purchase equipment. And that's part of the problem of not being able to support you. While we certainly recognize the value that your organization brings, you need to understand that we don't have the luxury of giving you the machines, because under the lease agreement that we have, we would need to pay them out in full and then give them to you, which would defeat the purpose of why we currently lease in the first place. So if you'd like to have any further conversation related to that, we certainly we can do that, but leave your information with Ms. Lynch.
Oh, I'd love to do that. And go ahead.
Can I just maybe make a suggestion? I know it's happened in my household, and I'm sure across the district.
Yes.
There's many other households that upgrade computers that probably don't lease them. Most families buy them. So perhaps there's something that we could partner with you on across the district with the families, saying if you've got outdated computer equipment, printers, whatever you're looking for. I don't know what all is in there. Is it just the CPU, or is it something broader, laptops or desktops or whatnot, that we can partner and perhaps have a collection activity somewhere?
Well,
not sure.
Well, that's actually certainly part of the whole volunteer piece, and maybe some engagement with our clubs. So make sure that you leave your information with Ms. Lynch, and we will have someone get a hold of you this week.
Okay. I do have one last thought. So First of all, I want to acknowledge you were here last time. Last time I was here, you were like 12 o'clock at night. I'm saying, these people must be crazy. They're volunteering to work this hard, and the responsibility you have. So I just deeply appreciate the work you're doing, the heart you have for the kids in this district. And I've been dealing with this issue of the achievement gap for a long time. By the time my son there's a program in Chestnut Hill that teaches parents how to teach babies how to read. And I've come to the conclusion that preschool is too late. And we have some proprietary software that in the hands of any parent can begin to teach kids reading, math, music, encyclopedic knowledge, anything. And I would love to find a way. It's untested, it's unproven, it's, blah, blah, but it's, I also wrote a book on massage for babies and children. That too is somewhat untested and unproven, but it's also common sense. That does not make it common practice. And what I'm talking about, although it's common sense, it's not common practice. And before I die, I'm going to do everything I can to find a way to get that idea into a school district somewhere. Because if you start in the beginning, you won't have this problem later on. You'll have some of the smarter kids in the world in your schools. You'll have to elevate your way of thinking, teaching. Because we've got a problem that somebody has to solve. How are we going to land somebody on Mars? And who's going to develop that technology? So it doesn't exist right now, and that's a kind of a way out-of-the-box kind of thinking. So thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you. Anybody else?
John Andrews, Lower Providence. Several times I've spoken to the board about a schedule analysis that I did for the high school classes for the school year of, I think, 2012, 2013, that showed that if we had perfect scheduling, we could have 20 fewer classes. And with the scheduling that we had then and that we still have, most of the common courses at that time had class sizes ranging from like 15 or 16, maybe up to 28, but typically well under the number of 25. And if you had just improved scheduling and you had 10 fewer teachers, that would be approximately $1.5 million of benefit to the budget. So then, several times, the superintendent has brought to the Education Committee the list of classes of small size, classes where, maybe there are 8 or 10 students, and the policy says that the board needs to approve classes of under 14 or 15. So then, very early this year, the superintendent engaged a Massachusetts outfit to do a high school scheduling study. And I'm kind of shocked that while that report is not available yet, and we paid, I don't know, $20,000 or more for it, that one outcome of it apparently is to change our scheduling software, where the scheduling software apparently is maybe a dozen years old. So it's not revamped every year by an outfit like Microsoft. And that so the improved software, apparently it's the superintendent's desire that we have that by November of 2017, 13 months from now. And I ask the simple question of, if we have a good recommendation for better software, why don't we go with it, and then we can utilize that in the scheduling for the 2017-2018 year at the high school rather than a year later, and perhaps save a considerable amount of money, because, among other things, since the year 2012-2013, the high school enrollment has gone down by about 200, and we have the same number of teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Joe Bickelman from Audubon. This has to do with the $22,000 for the repair of the girls' softball field. At the work session last week on Tuesday, the board was apprised that the original contractor would do the repair and correction for $22,000, but there was doubt on whether or not they can perform. So Dr. Zerbe had someone ready to jump in. If they didn't show up last Thursday to repair the field, they had somebody for $22,000. And it was pointed out that Mr. Fretz, who was in the audience, the Director of Buildings and Grounds, he said, yes, I called around and got 3 quotes, and coincidentally, the lowest quote was $22,000. And you were ready to go with the $22,000 quote that came. So I got up and I said, the simplest thing in school business, you're over $19,000, you have to bid it through advertising in the newspaper, because it's over $19,000 some odd dollars. You have to bid it. So the discussion went that you would approve the other vendor pending that it, under procurement laws, it was approved. So that's the simplest of things. So the solution was tonight that we'll go with the other vendor to repair the field for $18,000, and that our staff in the spring will do it for $3,000. You know, all that thinking should have happened before the work session last Thursday, that thought process. Okay, my buildings and grounds guy can't give me a number of $22,000 with 3 telephone quotes. It has to be advertised in 3 separate weeks in the newspaper. $22,000. A simple task. A simple number, a simple maximum. If you're over $19,000, you have to bid it. Well, now we're under $18,000, and our guys are going to do some work in the spring for $3,000. Okay? You have a document there that's over $100 million in proposed projects. I hope a lot of thought goes into the timing of the projects, the getting the vendors, the architects. I hope a lot of thought goes into that. I hope a lot of planning goes into that. That's just my take on what happened with that $22,000 item. On another note, I want to congratulate Daniel Penza. She got a District Excellence Award for having the additional tasks of Business Services Director from July 1 through till the hiring of Mr. Klaus. And you might think that the summertime is a slow time for the business office, but you're wrapping up one year, you're dealing with auditors, and you're starting another year. And there's a lot of juggling that she has to do. So I just want to make you aware that there was a lot on her shoulders, and it's good that she got that recognition. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, before I adjourn the meeting, I want to say congratulations to Tom again. And it's nice to have your wife here and your family, and we're looking forward to rolling up your sleeves and get going. I think we've set a record for time. I think Herb's going to feel bad that he was sick on this night. I'm a statistician, but I'm not going to draw a correlation between the two. We're just going to get going. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second. All those in favor? Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
Good job.